Hi. So, hi. To introduce myself, I'm Pratik. I'm the founder of Network for International Law Students, and I would like to thank NILS Bangladesh, which has always been one of the most active and one of the most active chapters of NILS, and it is a privilege for me to speak in the first season or the first in a series of first in series of an event where NILS Bangladesh is to looking to speak with legal professionals from across the globe. So, in case you have any questions or any comments, you can just put it in the comment box below, and yeah, and I'll answer to as many of them as possible. I have also received a number of questions. Uh, before this uh, before I started this, so I'll try to address as many of them as possible. uh, so the central theme of my let's say this talk would be my experience in founding NILS, my other let's say entrepreneurial experiences. So yeah, so I I had a very regular, like I was like any of you, but it's just that I started NILS quite early when I towards the end of the first year of my law school, and the idea was simple, to bring together law students and lawyers from all across the globe. And NILS Bangladesh is like a live example. Like it has brought thousands of law students across Bangladesh together, which is something which is unprecedented. And I think the next step for next NILS Bangladesh would be to engage more with the international legal community, and this initiative, NILS Bangladesh, would be quite helpful in providing the exposure to all the members of all the members, as well as other law students, in getting to know the legal markets globally, and the legal profession how the legal profession works globally as well. Now, in terms of uh, there are a few points that I would like to touch upon. uh, that I would like to touch upon, and the first of which I believe would be beneficial for anyone, like anyone, be it like if you want to be a lawyer, if you want to do anything else. So before that, I would like to give a deeper background about the work that I do. So I'm not a typical lawyer. So I do do some legal work, but it's not entirely. So you might have seen that I co-founded World of Forum, which about 2 years back, and I've been quite actively working on it. So as far as World of Forum is concerned, we advise on certain advice and take up initiatives on certain areas of law. The areas of law have been carefully chosen and curated uh, which we believe are the most important topics, which would be beneficial to discuss upon in the future. But again, like we only focus on those topics which are quite unique in its own way, and there are not many articles or reports or events on it. So through that, I try to stay as close to law as possible. But this is something which I am inclined towards, which I feel about. But it's not something which is my, let's say, bread and butter. In terms of what my bread and butter is, I advise law firms on business consulting, like business strategy. So I advise law firms on how should they do business, what should they, like which practice areas do they focus on, which geographical markets do they focus on, what should be their ultimate strategy in terms of approaching the legal market is concerned. So this is something which is, I would say, very unique uh, in the Indian market as well as globally. Now, uh, yeah, having given this background, the first thing that I would like to touch upon, which I believe is very important for all the law students or all professionals in general, is everyone should have an eye for opportunity. Now, anything I haven't, like, I'm not saying I've done a lot of things, but whatever I have done, uh, it's because I have had an eye for opportunity. uh, so you need to identify what all opportunities are there in the market. Now, a common mistake which people do is they try to replicate things. So they see that something has come up in the market, and that has become successful for them, so they just try to replicate it and say that if that person is making so much money out of it, or has become so successful doing that, even I won't do that. But I think that is the first biggest mistake, like not the biggest mistake, but that can be a major mistake which you do. uh, so the reason why NILS was successful was because I I understood and I realized that there is no such organization working in, let's say, South Asia. So there were some other associations in India, and like I'm sure that there would be other law students association in Bangladesh as well, but they were not very active, and they did not provide the kind of exposure that I wanted to provide with. And if you see in South Asia, the kind of exposure that we receive is somewhat limited as compared to what law students receive in the Western countries, for example. So, that's one big concern that I wanted to. That's one big issue that I wanted to address, where like the world is like, thanks to technology, like it's become very virtual. So irrespective of where you are situated, it should not mean that just because someone is from South Asia or like Africa, they should not have exposure to a certain kind of uh, law or so on. So I wanted to provide as much of exposure through NILS, and it became successful because we had literally no competitor at that point of time. Now, um, yeah, so now if any of you are interested in reading books, or or you don't even have to read the book, you just have to know the concept. So there's a entrepreneur business American businessman called Peter Thiel. He has written a book called Zero to One. What Zero to One basically is, it basically means for a person or for an organization to be successful, you need to take the market from zero to one. So what that basically means is, let's say there is a city, or there is a particular geographical area. Now there are 50 shops there. Okay, there are 50 shops which there are 50 bakery shops, let's say. Now, all 50 of them, they have a decent revenue, a decent amount of sales. Now what you do is that you see that there are 50 bakery shops who make a decent living. So you decide to set up a 51st shop. Now the problem there is there's nothing that sets you apart from the rest of the market. So, like, you might be successful, but you will always be moderately successful. You can never be a story by yourself. But at the same time, if you set up something which is new, which is not existing in that particular market, then people would have no choice but to come to you. there the chances of your success increases. Now, this is important because irrespective of whether you want to become a lawyer, you want to become an entrepreneur, or you want to do anything else, you need to ascertain what you need to do and whether or not someone else is doing it already or not, uh, and as well as if someone else is doing it, why should you do it? What difference can you bring into people's lives by doing it? If you don't have an answer to it, then don't do it. So if you see that there are lakhs, there are thousands of lawyers already in the market. Now, if you just want to, unless you are self confident that you are best than you are better than a majority of them, then there's a high probability that you will not be able to uh, you know be one of the top-notch lawyers in your country or in your city, for example. And that's why area of specialization is important. So you need to clearly determine uh, what all areas or what all laws in Bangladesh are important, and more importantly, what areas of law would be important maybe 5 years or 10 years down the line. Now, uh, there is again a concept which is followed by a leading Indian law firm, which is anticipate, prepare, and deliver. Now, what this entails is, uh, so there are very generic areas of law as well, which everyone wants to do, but then the problem there is everyone just does it blindly. But there are certain areas where there is not much literature about right now. So if you look into privacy laws or drone laws, I'm not actually aware of what the status is as far as Bangladesh is concerned, but things like privacy or anything technology related or cryptocurrency and so on, those are things which not a lot of lawyers really know about. And chances are that if you specialize in it, there won't be much business that you generate. So I'm guessing that you will graduate in this year, next year, in the next couple of years. So even in the next couple of years, cryptocurrency, for example, it's not something that would develop. It will need several years. So, but then you still need to think of the future, and this is the first step that I was mentioning, which is anticipate. So you need to anticipate what is going to be the next big thing in the world, and the second step would be then prepare. So you need to prepare to become an expert in that area, uh, because everyone would be following what the crowd is following, where currently the money is, or where currently most of the work is being generated from. But you need to, while you have to do a part of that, you also need to spend hours and be industrious in preparing for the next big thing. The benefit of this is, let's say in 5 years or 10 years down the line, if there is a regulatory change in your country which allows cryptocurrency, there will be only a maximum of two or three lawyers, who do that, and you being one of them. So you all of a sudden you will see all the leading companies who want to enter the market would come to you, because they don't have a lot of options. It's you plus maybe three or four lawyers who have focused in. Cryptocurrency is just an example. So there are other evolving areas of law, mostly tech related, so digital banking, digital payments, and so on. So you need to you need to sit and identify what is it that you want to focus on, and what is it that will make you different. And in case you are interested in something like human rights or something which is more generic, criminal law, you just have to it's a bit more difficult there, because you need to find areas where you need to excel in, where none of because I would assume that there would be thousands of human rights lawyers in Bangladesh, but what is it that would make you different? So you need to select a couple of areas 2 3 areas maximum, and just work on it as much as you can, and become try to become an expert on it. Now the second thing is one this is all about opportunity. Now, I think I left 0 to 1 midway. So, what this concept of 0 to 1 is, when you are identifying an opportunity, you should ensure that uh, there are zero number of players in the market, and you are taking it from 0 to 1 by becoming the first player. If you do that, the chances of success increases many folds. Yeah, so like if possible, do give it a read of the book, or just google it up as to what the concept is, and just try identifying opportunities which would help you succeed. And the other thing which you need to focus on is be like true to yourself. So uh, like, just because you have entered law school does not mean that you have to end up being a lawyer. So the world is evolving. There are so many opportunities. So at any point, if you think that you cannot become a lawyer, or even if you can become a lawyer, the reason why, let's say, why I didn't become the regular lawyer is that like the first patron of NILS is a gentleman called Mr. Ramjit Malani. So I'm not sure if you have heard of him, but he is he he was unfortunately, he passed away last year at the age of 96. But he is probably the greatest lawyer ever born in the country or in the world, especially in the area of criminal law and constitutional law. Uh, so when I founded NILS, he was amongst the first supporters of NILS, and I've worked with him so closely, and I've seen him work, so industriously, that I never I couldn't imagine myself being that great of a lawyer. So I asked myself a question that whether it's worth being a lawyer if you're not that good, because like, he was just at another level. And for those who do not know who he is, you can just Google him up, Ramjesh Malani. And so he started, and like, one of the question which I received before starting this was, a person who inspires you the most. So he is hands down the person who who I am most inspired by. So he was born in like in Karachi, like then in Sindh, Pakistan, and then he migrated to India during the partition. So he started law at 18 years of age, because he got some double promotions in school, and he practiced law till the age of 94, like almost until he passed away recently. And the greatness, like, he has handled some of the most controversial and the biggest criminal matters in India. So one of, like, our former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, when she was assassinated, uh, the her bodyguards, they were given death sentence by the courts in India. Now one of the convicts, he they ask the convicts that, like, since everyone has a right to justice, they ask him whether they would like a lawyer, and then he said yes. And then he also mentioned the name that he would like to be defended by Ramjet Malani appeared for him, and that person, who was on a death row, by the end of the trial, he was acquitted. So you see the greatness of a person, that a prime minister of a country uh, was assassinated, and the person who allegedly killed him, but was an innocent, was acquitted. Now, so, like I said to myself that, if I can't be that good a lawyer, if I can't be like remotely as good a lawyer, there is no point for me becoming a lawyer. So I I thought to myself that, what else am I good at? So by the time I had become quite I have gained some experience in management through NILS and through the other entrepreneurial uh, activities that I've taken up, initiatives that I've taken up. So, so I ventured into something which is very unique. So I approached law firms, small law firms, and I asked them whether they would want to get a consultant to advise them on how to do business. So this is something which is uh, very common in the Western countries again, but not something very common in South Asia, because because lawyers and law firms. It's looked at a looked as a noble profession and not really a business. But at the end of it, if you look into it, it's is as much of a business as anything else. So I started with it, and the benefit that I got here is that there are hardly any competitors. Uh, there are hardly any competitors in India. So yeah, and currently I work with close to 10 law firms at the same 10 law firms at the same time. Um, as a consultant for all of them. So this is something which, and I started last year. Like I graduated in 2018, so there hasn't been much time since then. So if you see, because I was offering something new, something unique, uh, and if you are confident that you're good at it, so there's nothing that can stop you as far as you are able to deliver the results. So yeah, I think that's that. And since it's a 1 hour session, I'll just quickly glance through some of the questions that I've received. And if you have any questions, you can just put it in the comment, and I'll try to answer as many of them as possible. Mm, yeah. So the number one question is that I would like to take up is, what is your hardest struggling step of being an entrepreneur? So now being an entrepreneur it's difficult. Now people think it's cool, but it's quite industrious and it's quite difficult, and uh, it's one thing that that can either make you or destroy you. And like as far as startups are concerned, 90 95% of the startups, or I believe 98% of the startups, do not last beyond their first year of existence. So that is a challenge by itself. Now, as far as my struggle is concerned, so the first thing, and as well as struggles by most of the entrepreneurs, it would be that people, uh, you have an idea and you want to do something, and you discuss it with other people. So finding the right support is the biggest challenge. So you speak to your family and friends, and not everyone can be entrepreneurial. So not everyone has the same mindset. So when you speak with them, you don't see getting the kind of reaction that you would expect or that you would want uh, to for them to give you. They'll tell you that this is a great idea. So this again happened when I started with NILS. So the idea was very straightforward. That I wanted to create a network for students internationally. A common platform for law students across a country, or in inter countries, to come together and discuss on areas of law and developing regulatory changes, etc. Now, when I spoke to people about this, like experienced people, they'd be like, "It's a great idea, but you're in the first year of your law school. Uh, you don't even know much law, so how are you gonna do it? So this was a standard answer which I received, and then there's like they're like, it's gonna take a lot of money to get things done. So what resources do you have? But but at the end, all that matters is how confident you are. Like, you need to be confident and you need to be realistic. So these are the two things. If you think that something is achievable, as well as something that you are really confident about achieving, then you don't even need anyone's support. You just you know get ahead with it. When I started NILS, I was one person alone. There was no one else. I There was a co-founder, but she didn't, she was from Belgium, and then it never worked out beyond the first month. She lost interest and so on. But I could have lost hopes then. I didn't, and then I wrote a lot of letters to lawyers across India, and then no one really responded. But then I had lost hopes to some extent. But then I got a couple of favorable response, and then I told myself that this is not something to lose hope about, and you should just keep trying. So I tried and I got some success, and then it happened. I got support from people like Nasreen uh, and so on, other people who founded NILS Bangladesh, and similarly from uh, other parts of the world as well. So things fall in place. We got sponsors, we got support, and everything. So I'm sure it happens for every organization. There is a struggle period, um, but people get acquainted with, and they do take you seriously after a point of time. Now the second issue is, again, so when you are coming up with something which is very unique, or something which people you know do not so it's like, when you go to someone and you pitch an idea, and they think it from their perspective. So if they think that it's something that they can do, they would say that it's a good idea. If it's something that they think that won't work, they would say it's not a good idea. But it's a matter of perspective. um, and yeah, so what matters at the end is how confident you are of your idea working out. Now, my new when I started my new organization, uh, of or my new initiative of advising law firms. So I had to, it was a very difficult task, because a number of lawyers, because I spoke to quite a few law firms, some of which have been lawyers who have been practicing law um, for a good 30-40 years. And I'm here, they have been practicing law for more time than I have lived on earth. So I'm 25, I was 25, and they have practiced law for 35 years. And I was there, telling them that I'll tell you how to do business. So they'll be like, okay, so you're too young to do it. So but then you still have to stand your ground. You need to be confident that even if they are far senior to you, you know your stuff. So you know how this world works, and you know what your offerings are. um, yeah, so at first, that's a hard part. People, if you are young, and if you're pitching something which is unique, they won't be up for it, uh, because they don't think that it's something that can be doable. There are many stories. Uh, there are many stories on about this. Netflix, for example. Netflix was founded way back, about 20 years back, and when they pitched the idea to a few investors, they were like, "Okay, it's never gonna work." Now Netflix is taking the whole cinema and theaters by a storm. Yeah, so moving on to the next question. Yeah, how would you how would you advise to be good in communication for the job market? In one sentence, how to develop communication skill. Now, okay, now communication. Now, okay, so there are two kinds of people. Uh, like the first kind is me, where for me to speak about something, I really need to understand. I really need to understand the subject and um, and be thorough with it for me to speak. Uh, the second kind of people are, whether or not they know something, they'll just speak on it. Like whether they don't care whether it makes sense or not, whether it makes sense or not, but they're good at speaking, so they speak. So like the ideal scenario should be, you should be in the middle. You should not just speak anything, because it's good if the other side does not know anything about the topic, but if the other side knows remotely anything about the topic and you're just bluffing about it, they'll know that you're a joke. So it's best at certain point to just say that you're ignorant of certain things. Uh, but as far as I'm concerned, so I'm not a very great communicator, like, so to say, but I only speak on, and I don't even talk a lot. I don't, so I mind my own business. Most of my work is done by emails now. So you need to understand. So there is, now, to ace your communication skill, it's obviously, uh, I'm talking about from an English perspective, like communication skills in English, or let's say, any language which is not your first language or your mother tongue. So you need to be good with your vocabulary. So try reading books, try reading editorials of English newspapers, The Guardian, and so on areas of like public policy and law as such. So, and also, start writing on it. So writing skills is perhaps the most important of all, because it's permanent. So when you speak something, it's not permanent. Uh, when you write something, that's imprinted. Your writing skills are more important than your speaking skills, I would say. But your speaking skills are important to make a first impression. So especially when you are meeting someone who's senior, they don't have all the time in the world. So articulating what you want to say in the shortest manner possible is the real communication skill. One common mistake which lawyers do, as far as speaking is concerned or as far as writing is concerned, is that they 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 say a lot. So they would just go on a particular topic when speaking, uh, or they would just write really long articles, really complicated words. But as you become a professional, you try to realize that all these legal words, legal jargons, they mean nothing. So if you look into all the most successful lawyers in the world, they would write in the simplest of English, because when you write in the simplest of English, you are reaching out to a far wider audience, and you are able to uh, communicate communicate and make an impact in many more lives. If I So there's a member of parliament in India called Shashi Tharoor. So you may have seen themes across the border as well. He's one who likes to use fancy English terms, but then the problem there is, you can just stay in awe of the person, but if you don't understand, you're not really making any impact on the society. So try to be as plain with your English as possible, and yeah, and try to make sense. So if you make sense, yeah, you like that's the best way to communicate with others. I'll take some questions from here. So Sushanto asks, which few skills that a leader of an organization must have to run the organization, especially law student run organization. I'll take one more. Can a lawyer be an entrepreneur too? And okay, okay. I'll start with, can a lawyer be an entrepreneur too? How the concept of entrepreneurship connects with law. Now, the lawyers, and so I think what is, what is, let's say, entrepreneurship, or who is a entrepreneur. So it's a misconception, sort of partially, that anyone who let's say have a startup is an entrepreneur. But any business that you run, or like law, like any profession that you are in, you are an entrepreneur. There would be, even when you're out there, when you graduate, you become a lawyer. You're not the first lawyers in Bangladesh. There are already lakhs of lawyers, you know, already there, and you're trying to make a place for yourself. So now unless you have entrepreneurial instincts, and as I earlier mentioned, you are able to identify opportunities and address issues, or there are uh, so uh, so you find areas of law which are not being served, or in Bangladesh there are particular areas of law where there are no good lawyers. So the entrepreneur in a lawyer would help identify those areas, and become an expert in those areas. So you always need to be an entrepreneur to succeed in life. The day you stop becoming an entrepreneur, I think you as a lawyer would stop growing, because you will become a successful lawyer if you get loads of clients. Your client list builds, um, after a certain point of time, maybe after 30-40 years, if you are very successful, people come to you. It's okay. It's okay for them. It's okay at that point of time to not look into the business side of things, because you are anyway uh, generating enough income. But until then, until the first 10 years, 20 years, you should always strive to learn more. And entrepreneurship is also not just about business. You just, as a lawyer, considerable, it's a part of us. You should always try to give back to society as much as possible. So unless you are an entrepreneur, you won't be able to identify issues which affect the society, and also understand how, there are many issues in South Asian countries. There's corruption, there is poverty, and so on. But uh, but uh, but unless you are an entrepreneur, uh, you won't be able to come up with an idea which will address those issues. So anything which brings anything new to society, is entrepreneurship, according to me. The next question is, yeah, skills that a leader must have to run an organization. So I won't restrict it to law student run organization. I just, the the concept, or the principle is similar. Now, uh, so I think the first, yeah, for any organization to succeed, there are two levels to it. One is the leadership, and then there are other people who work with the leadership to make the organization successful. So I think trust is one of the key issues. Obviously, the organization has to do, the organization has to do, something unique, and which will be successful in the future. And the leader must be able to instill the confidence in the other members, that they are in a they are in it together. So first of all, for me myself, and I, when I advise law firms, like one of my primary focus is to remove hierarchy, because whenever there are hierarchies, the organizations are not successful because either, so it's a hit or miss. So even let's take the example of countries. Okay, now there is democracy, like ours, where you don't really know. You go to vote and you don't really know who's coming into power. But then the majority votes for it, and that person may be good, that person may not be good. The other kind of country is authoritarian, where you'd see that a dictator runs it. So it can, like, as far as dictatorships are concerned, uh, it can either be great. So like you see, for example, for UAE, they have been highly successful. It's very modern, very developed, but it's still a dictatorship because the person who runs it, he runs it like a business. Uh, so when the country prospers, the family prospers, and they prosper, and everyone prospers together. But this is an exception. But if you look into most of the countries worldwide, dictatorship, the people in dictator countries, they live in abysmal conditions. There is lots of corruption, there is no governance, and so on. The same sort of applies in an organization. So for an organization to succeed, if a leader just does what he wants without listening to others, 99% of the chances is that they would not succeed, because they're just going into one direction. They're not understanding what other perspectives are, and it's just not possible for the leader to be always right. Therefore, a leader must always have an open ear to suggestions, to suggestions which might come their way from the members, even if it's at the junior most level. And yeah, and instill confidence. Communication is important. You need to be able to communicate with your members properly. Yeah, and lead by example. So if they see that the leader is not working, there's a high chance that the other people won't work, because they see that probably the leader themselves is not serious enough. So I think, like, if you do this, like yeah, and more or less your organization could be successful. It's not really possible for me to go into much detail on all the questions. So yeah, I mean, if you can just email me or something, or yeah, just feel free to reach out to me, and I'll give you with more answers, better answers. Okay, next. All right, so I will. There are a couple of questions on human rights. So yeah, so I'll try to address this one question, because again, this again relates back to, so as far as me being a lawyer is concerned. So I work uh, in certain areas of law. Business and human rights is one of them. Now, when I was in third year of my law school, and I didn't really know back then as to what I wanted to do, whether I wanted to become a lawyer, whether I wanted to become something else. Then I decided that, like, what I saw around is that a lot of lawyers become lawyers just because they ended up in law school, and they just join the bandwagon to it, and they're just like anyone else. So at times, lawyers also feel that they're not satisfied with the work that they're doing. And for me, law was something which I was very passionate about. But you cannot be passionate about just all kinds of law. You can be passionate about a particular kind of law. For example, tax law is something which, if you give me $1 million, like, I won't do it, because I'm just not inclined to it. So I will do it for the $1 million, but I won't give you a sound advice, and I won't become a successful lawyer. Now, um, when I was in the third year of my law school, I came across something called as business and human rights. Uh, Now, I found this really concept really interesting, and this is especially very important for Bangladesh as a country, and something which you may consider focusing on. So, if you look into human rights, a lot of people know what human rights is and are also interested in it. Now, human rights is something uh, which is which is for the state to protect. So, if your human rights is violated, if your fundamental rights are violated, you 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 go to the court against the state. Now, as far as business and human rights is concerned, uh, it's related to human rights, but it's about businesses being more responsible to protect human rights. And so in 2011, the UN came up with something called as UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. Now, what this like the crux of this document is that the certain corporations which are so big and so humongous and are the I wouldn't take any names here, but there are certain companies, multinational companies, which have a revenue bigger than some countries, and most of these large companies, they are based in Western countries, and then they outsource a lot of their work to India, Bangladesh, Vietnam, China, and so on, because of cheap labor. Now, uh, now, uh, now here, when they are operating in, let's say, Bangladesh, they operate through a third party, and the third party, they do not have really any obligations to protect human rights, because everyone wants to make the most profit. The laborers or the workers, they are given abysmally low salaries, they're not paid on time, etc. Now, business and human rights is something which gained traction after, and this is why I said it's important for Bangladesh, because it gained a lot of traction after the Rana Plaza incident happened in 2011. So after Rana Plaza happened in Bangladesh, it got international eyeballs. So a lot of large textile companies, they were manufacturing out of Bangladesh, and when the families of the victims went to those companies, the textile manufacturers who would ultimately sell a piece of clothing for $1,000. When the families went to them, they were like, we're not responsible for this. We had hired a local agency to do it for us, so you can go to them. We don't know why the building collapsed. Now, uh, business and human rights, it's soft law, so you can't really enforce it. But the crux of it is that businesses, you know, because they should have a certain degree of responsibility to respect human rights. So more and more businesses, they are trying to uh, ensure that in their supply chains, human rights are protected. There are no child laborers and so on. Uh, this is because another incident which happened in a English brand called Primark. So Primark it's a apparel brand. It's a textile brand. And what happened there is, when a person was shopping in one of their retail stores in England, uh, uh, one of the retail stores in England, uh, there was a tag written, which which was basically a SOS message saying that how deplorable conditions, human conditions, the workers are working in, and that person, she went to the media and showed the particular tag, and then an investigation happened and so on. Now what happened was, after this happened, after this incident happened, the company faced huge losses because people started boycotting that product. They said that, we won't uh, wear wear clothing from your brand if you can't really, if you're having child labor, if you can't even ensure basic rights to the people who manufacture the clothes. And there are these NGOs, there are these human rights organizations who, had campaigns, had boycott campaigns where uh, where they ask people to, boycott certain products because no one wanted to have bloods of people in their clothing. Uh, so it's a business issue for it's a business issue for a lot of it's also a business issue for corporations to take into consider. And Bangladesh is very important here because a lot of work, especially in the textile sector, it's outsourced to Bangladesh, and so it's your duty as lawyers to, stand up for the people who can't stand up for themselves. And this is a sector where a lot of international law firms are working in as well. So if you take this up, chances are that, and become an expert in it, chances are that you can also be hired as an expert in this area of law by an international law firm, or any UN bodies like who actively work in this area. So I reread the question again. I couldn't quite understand it. It says, "Don't you think for a greater business, some sort of human rights can be harmed for a shorter period and then make preparation for the violations?" So if you can rephrase it, I'll try answering it again. I hope I have answered it. I'm not sure now that I reread the question. So, you can just, Fatima Zara, if you can just uh, rewrite the question, I'll be able to answer it. What else? Um, yeah, future for NILS. So uh, right now we are doing some restructuring at an international level. So, like, this is something that I am working closely with a lot of other advisors as well, who are international lawyers, because right now what happens is, so I founded NILS, and so I was at the core of it, and then I left it all of a sudden. Now, and we are not registered, we are registered in Geneva, and each year you have to go for your annual general meetings. So at times it becomes really difficult for us to for us to get all the board members of the international board there at the same time. And ideally we would also want members, like at least the leadership, or of uh, all the active, or of the all the active chapters, to be present in our annual meetings, so that we can strategize how the organization moves forward. So we are trying to decentralize NILS a bit, so that because going to Geneva becomes an expensive task for the organization and for anyone who wants to travel there. So starting next year, we would have regional level uh, regional level meetings, where in a particular region all the chapter heads would meet, and maybe, some of them can represent uh, a particular region at the international meeting. So there is some restructuring going on, uh, and so as to streamline things a bit. Yeah, that has kept me busy because we are transition we are The other problem is, so I am in India, and the reason why I didn't want NILS to be established in India or any country which is closer to here, because there are lots of regulations which makes it difficult to run an international organization. So it's much easier for NILS to function out of Geneva, and we have slowly started transitioning to moving our base to London, and we are receiving some support from City of London in getting established there. Uh, and we also have another proposal from the Hague where but the talks is ongoing. So yeah, I'm trying to restructure the whole organization so that like we have achieved a lot of things, but we have also uh, not achieve a few things which I would have liked to. So I would want there to be more opportunities uh, for law students to engage more internationally. Now, what happens is when there's a chapter, most of the members of the chapter, they interact, they have local events, and they function in a local level, which I think is not really uh, which is like not really why to so to say why I started the organization. I wanted law students to grow a more international exposure. So I would try, like it's difficult, but I am trying to devise mechanisms and structures where it's easier for law students to have access uh, to other members of other law schools. So there's something that that is quite difficult as well, because earlier, a couple of years back, I tried to create, like we not tried, we actually created a platform where uh, where a common platform where everyone, all the members all the members of NILS can come together, interact with each other. But then that posed some serious problems, because not everyone is the same. But then this is something that I hate to say, but a lot of people in the subcontinent, in India, Bangladesh, Nepal, they they try to just even if they do not know the other person, they would just infringe into their inboxes, boys into girls mostly, which is not the most pleasant experience. So we had to do away with the platform, because there were like some members, especially females from European countries and a few even African countries, they were complaining that they get a lot of random messages, and it just did not give uh, the correct let's say outlook of what our members are. I'm sure our members are much better than that, but there were a few instances of like weird stuff happening. So we wanted to create a check for that, and we thought that maybe it's too early for that. So yeah, so we will try to devise a mechanism to enable all the national chapters to function more internationally. It's a complicated process, so it's gonna take us a few months, maybe a year down the line, because uh, this time I do not want things to get messed up, because it has been so once. So when I'm trying to bring something up, it has to be foolproof this time. And in case you have any ideas of what the NILS can do, what it's doing, what it's not doing, then just please feel free uh, to email me. I can drop you my email address here. Feel free to send me an email, and yeah, I'll try to answer as many of them as possible. Uh, Now, yeah, I actually just remembered something on an earlier question on communication, so which I missed out. So one of the things which you need to realize is that not everyone is a good communicator. Uh, I just remembered this because I mentioned email. Now you need to realize whether or not you're a good communicator. Number one, try to improve your oratory skills. See how good you can be. um, and if you think that you have improved, great for you. If you haven't been able to improve as much as you would have liked to, it's not the end of the world. Now now uh, I'm the founder of Network for International Law Students. The first word of it is network, because I understand that, especially in the legal profession, networking is the key. You need to reach out to all the relevant people. You need to attend conferences. You need to uh, yeah, you need to just try to meet out to as many people who are important to your career, or who you think are just important key stakeholders in the society. uh, and this is how lawyers really get successful. They try to build a network, and then they get work. They get pulled for some advisory work, or you know and so on. But speaking for myself, uh, like I'm not a great networker. Okay. Now, like, I mean networker from a from a traditional definition. Now, what people think most networkers are, so there are conferences, and especially if you know uh, I'm not sure of the status in Bangladesh, but in India there are lots of law conferences on certain topics where you see lawyers, like hundreds of lawyers, coming in and then just sharing business cards with people who they would like to be familiar with. But this does not help. But this is not something which I can do. I'm not very comfortable. Just I'm a very introvert person, so I'm not comfortable just walking up to someone and introducing myself unless I have something like really solid to speak about. So I can't do small talks now. So what I do is, uh, you just have to find a way to get things done. Now, let's say, in a conference that there are 100 people, but you see that you need to make connects with just two of them, or even one of them. So you need to narrow down who are you targeting to not targeting, or who you want to connect with. Now, once you have done that, now you will see that those people are generally important, and there'll be at least 4 or 5 people surrounding them all the time. Now, it's very difficult for me that you go to the group, you already see 4 or 5 people talking, so you have to butt in, and you just have to start saying something, and it's not something that I can do. So there are people who can just talk out of nowhere. I'm not that person, so I just listen to it. I just listen to what they're talking about. But as soon as I tried, like, if I find an opportunity, if I have something unique, if I had some value to add to the conversation, I add to it. But if I have no value to add, it's okay. Like, I don't speak, but I listen. So listening is important. But as soon as I go back home, I do some research on the topic, on what they were discussing on, and I try to form an opinion. I send an email to the person saying, it was a pleasure speaking to you earlier. We had a discussion on this, and this is, something that, this is my opinion on something, and I would like to hear your views on it. Now, this is something not many people do. People would just exchange business cards and just hope that the other person, and they think it's the end of the world that that person has his or her business card. And but then it's not that simple. Even if, like, considering that man has just spoken before an audience of 100 people and has met so many people in their lives, like, he's in a day or two or a week, he's gonna forget about you. But if you start a email conversation with him or her, then the chances are that if he or she decides to respond back to you, this you establish a channel of communication. You can reply back, and maybe he or she replies back. That's how you get to be more familiar with a particular person. And this is how I have created the whole organization, be it NILS, be it World of Forum. So in World of Forum, so at the beginning, so I used to so, like, if you see, like, we're not very old. We are 2 years old, but our conferences have been have been attended by former presidents of former prime ministers of UK, Australia, and so on, which is quite unique considering we're not that old and we're not really an established organization in like like any organization which is 2 years old is quite new and not something which one would consider established. But I've made all my connects this way. I've never spoken to anyone in a conference I met, but I try following it up with something which I think would add value to that person. So if that person is is like, you should understand that if that person uh, for the person to respond to you, you should be worth his or her time. So you should, your email should be catchy. Now this is something which I mentioned because I put in my email. So feel free to drop any messages, but email communication is the most important form of communication. So uh, try to be like, because I receive a lot of emails as well, so I can't respond to all of them, or there will be delays. So in terms of who I respond to would depend on how articulate your email is. So this is not just for me. I'll try to answer, because NILS is my own organization. I'll try to answer to as many members as possible. But this is just for you, in case you want to reach out to anyone else who's not aware of NILS or who's not aware about you generally. So you should really try easing up your emailing skills. Feel free to reach out to me, and ask me, how can you do that. Like, I do not have really, it's something that you develop over time. So yeah, I guess you should start working on it. I can take one last question, I think. Yeah, the last question, I think I have answered. There are quite a couple of questions on human rights, so I'll just say one more thing, which I think all of you who are interested in human rights can read upon. Now, there's something all of you must know of arbitration, international, like basically commercial arbitration. Now, commercial arbitration is something which is generally for commercial purposes. So there are two parties, and if one party infringes or does not do what he's supposed to do, the other party invokes an arbitration. Now, I was a part of a working group, which was backed by the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague. That group released in December 2019, a few months back, something called as the Hague Rules on Business and Human Rights Arbitration. It's a new concept, like, where which basically states that human rights cases should be adjudicated by arbitration, because historically, as per New York Convention, only commercial cases, or cases which have a commercial value attached to it, um, can be arbitrated. But as far as human rights cases are concerned, where let's say a company is violating, so let's say there's a company, there's a shoe manufacturing company in the US which is manufacturing shoes in Bangladesh by an agent. Now, what business and human rights arbitration is mandates them, is that if they adopt it, they would have an arbitration agreement between each of their suppliers or contractors. Now, how this helps is, if you see, most of the human rights violations, they happen in countries where either there are courts, there are lots of delays in courts, or the courts are non-existent or corrupt. So in South Asia, we all know that there's a lot of trouble with pendency of cases, access to justice. If you go to court, you're not sure. Like there's a lot of hassle as to how you can approach the court. Um, yeah. So and in African countries, there are certain countries where a lot of outsourcing work happens. Um, uh, but the courts are all like very corrupt there, where you can easily buy off the judges, or the courts are almost non-existent now. Like, or even there are no human rights law there. So for any of these factors, uh, like if there is a victim, like even if he or she goes to the court, they won't get a remedy out of it because the court is like dysfunctional, right? Now that's why arbitration plays such a crucial role as far as human rights is concerned at an international level. So what this does is each of the suppliers or everyone in the supply chain, they are mandated uh, by uh, by an arbitration clause. So in case a supplier is employing child labor or you know there is any kind of human rights violation, then a local NGO can take all the victims together and they can file an arbitration suit, which can be handled at an international level by competent arbitrators. There are aspects of third party funding where, like, third party funding is another interesting concept. If you do not know about, in simple terms, it is litigation funding or arbitration funding. So it's something which which is in a mixed, which a lot of people are not sure about whether or not it's legal or illegal. It's basically about this concept of champerty. So it's basically about whether or not it's third party funding is someone funding your case for you to fight in the court. Now this is something which is frowned upon under common law, but this plays a huge factor in human rights cases because now what happens is that on one side you have wealthy corporations, and on one side you have people who are underprivileged. So the wealthy corporations, what they will do is they will get the best legal teams because they can pay. Now, on the other side, you will have public prosecutors who are already overburdened by work and who cannot match the intellectual level or the kind of expertise which all these big shot lawyers have. Now, with third party funding, what happens is you are able to raise funding to even get a team like this on your case. So let's say there's a mining company uh, which is doing mining, and it is causing a lot of environmental damage in a particular village. So, and like as per law, these guys, the victims, the people who live there, they have a strong chance to succeed in the case, but they don't have the resources to fight them in court. Here third party funding plays a important role because you can pool in funds, you can get the best legal team you can, and there are companies who fund it, who will give you money uh, to fight your case, and they will of course profit out of it because like courts, they give a penalty of, let's say, $1 million, a couple of $1 million, which would go into their pockets after they pay the victims what they deserve. So it's a business for them at the end of the day, but it helps the victims because otherwise they would never even stand a chance to uh, to go to court. So third party funding also plays a crucial role as far as business and human rights arbitration is concerned. There is transparency. Uh, there are trained judges who understand what human rights is, what arbitration is. So yeah, I think this is something you guys can write about, read about, or discuss about. Or yeah, I'd be happy to connect you with business and human rights professionals globally who will be happy to take a lecture, give an introductory lecture on who is it, or even I can do so at some other time. Uh, I think I have overshot the time as well. So I think, yeah, that is it. In case there is anything else that you would like to know, feel free to reach out to me by email. I don't really use Facebook as much anymore, so yeah, I'll be faster in my response if you just email to me. Yeah, in case you have any ideas, if in case you won't have any ideas, you want to run someone by, I'll be more than happy to be all ears, give you some advice if I can. And yeah, it was a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you for this opportunity. And yeah, I look forward to staying connected with the members of NILS Bangladesh. And thank you again.